Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and my co-host here.
I'm Jason Harris. I am a filmmaker, I am a comedian, and I am a professional latke chef.
You're maybe not a professional, but you do make some good latkes.
I made some good latkes. I can make the latkes. Dave, you make the latkes?
I've made latkes before, yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
How are they?
They came out pretty good.
Yeah, there you go.
A little bunchy.
You like them soft, or you like them with the crispiness? I like them crispy.
Some crispiness, not burnt.
I, of
but
course, can't eat them anymore, but that's another story.
Yeah, because he's all, a model now.
Yeah.
Other latke question. Sour cream or applesauce?
I'm definitely sour cream.
Both.
That's the right answer.
Oh.
Trick question.
Yeah.
Good job.
And even worse, I put ketchup on them sometimes, like they're French fries.
It's a potato. I can understand that.
So why are we talking about latkes? Because this is a special holiday episode of Awesome Movie Year. We are in between seasons 2 and 3 and looking at some holiday movies. And for this episode, we're looking ahead to our upcoming season on the films of 1989 with National Lampoon's Christmas
Hanukkah Vacation.
Yeah. Thank you. No Hanukkah. I guess we didn't find any Hanukkah movies to talk about.
Not from the years that we've already covered.
There are a very small number of Hanukkah movies, but lots of Christmas movies, including National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which is just a really fun movie.
Hey man, it's going to be in theaters. Like literally as we're talking, they put it in theaters, I think every year right now.
Yeah,
right?
it is a beloved kind of perennial movie to revisit at the holidays. Even more so than the movie we just talked about on our last episode, The Ref, which is kind of more of a cult holiday movie still. This is one that really is for the masses.
This is one for the whole family to sit down and enjoy for the most part. I was watching it with my 6-year-old and we got through about half of it where I was like, maybe shut it off now because it gets a little racy in places, but she did, for the most part, it was fair for a 6-year-old to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely less racy, I think, at least than the first Vacation movie.
Yeah, the first two, I'd say.
Yeah. So, and it was also a pretty decent size hit at the time that it was released in 1989. It grossed $71.3 million on a budget of $25 million. And it was the highest grossing vacation movie until the 2015 Vacation sort of reboot remake. And of course, inflation is really a reason for that.
Is that the reason?
I mean, I didn't do the math because as we've established, that's not something we do here.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that it's a large part of the reason because that 2015 movie was not a big hit.
Right. So I'm confused about that.
But just in sheer numbers, it would have made more.
Good.
Because making that amount is not.
No one's putting that thing back in the theaters.
No, definitely not. And an interesting thing to me was that, and I think this speaks to the way that this is more of just a movie that people go see with the family for Christmas and less something that was like, we have to see right away, that it didn't hit number 1 at the box office until its 3rd week of release.
Yeah.
So it built over time.
Stay there for 2 weeks, weeks 3 and 4, which is always a good sign.
Yeah. And it's grown even more in reputation since it was released, because at the time it got mixed or even maybe mixed to negative reviews, especially compared to the earlier Vacation movies. It currently has a 65% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which, as I've said multiple times, it's hard to trust Rotten Tomatoes on movies that came out before Rotten Tomatoes existed. But that's a relatively low rating. It did get a B+ from CinemaScore, the audience polling service. So people who saw it mostly liked it. And it got 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert.
Bah, humbug.
They were not fans of it. Roger Ebert said, "There are long stretches in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation when it almost works. The movie is curious in how close it comes to delivering on its material. Sequence after sequence seems to contain all the necessary material to be well on the way toward a payoff, and then it somehow doesn't work. You have the odd sensation watching the movie that it's straining to get off the ground, but simply doesn't have the juice." And it's essentially the same thing that he said on the show.
Yeah.
Talking about it with Paul Siskel.
But what if Jack Nicholson was talking about it?
No. Stop. Don't.
I don't agree with this one.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with him either. I like this movie quite a bit, but it was interesting to see especially because it's so beloved now and it seems like almost universally liked, that there was a lot of negativity about it when it came out.
Yeah, and you would think, I mean, I know we're going to get into it. I thought this is a very good representation of what John Hughes does well, and I would think that critically they would have given him a little leeway because he did those John Hughes things in this movie, and that's
Yeah.
what I would have thought. But I wasn't even a teenager at the time. I was
No.
just a young lad.
I too was a young lad when this movie came out.
So
yeah, and I think it's also a good representation of what Chevy Chase can do. But I think maybe at the time, like there was a lot of criticism of it being just kind of Chevy Chase going through the motions. I think maybe at the time he was a little oversaturated in pop culture and people didn't appreciate his talents as much.
I don't think he went through the motions. I thought he,
No, I didn't either. Again, I think this is one of his best performances, honestly. But I'm just saying at the time, I think people were maybe a little sick of him. Rita Kempley in the Washington Post said, as the unsinkable Clark Griswold of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Chevy Chase survives a holiday season that would try Job's patience. He dreams of, quote, the most fun-filled, old-fashioned family Christmas ever, soon give way to the realities of bulbs that won't light and a pine that's too big for the living room. Never mind. Clark's faith in family tradition is Rockwellian. His spirit's up there with the mistletoe. When the Yule log smolders and the turkey explodes, this avowed family man counts his blessing, such as they are. And I think that's a big thing about this movie, is that Clark Griswold is so dedicated to this vision of his perfect family.
Right. And, as we know from the first one, and you got to get to Wally World, we got to relive these memories. We got to have that perfect Christmas at the house.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a poignancy to that, especially in this movie, in Clark Griswold's determination to make his family, his messed up, angry family, into this perfect vision of old-fashioned Americana or something like that.
Yeah, and he has a little more patience with people because of that. I would say other family members who visit him.
Yes, he does. Janet Maslin in the New York Times was not a fan. She said, fatigue is in the air. This third look at the quintessentially middle American Griswold family, led by Clark and the very patient Ellen, played by Beverly D'Angelo, is only a weary shadow of the original National Lampoon's Vacation, which found a lot to laugh at as it followed the dopey paterfamilias Clark and his quarrelsome brood on a hellish cross-country journey in their station wagon. The new film does little more than reintroduce these familiar characters with new actors playing the children who would otherwise be college age by now, and let them get on one another's nerves in earnest. So I think there was, again, it was the fatigue with Chevy Chase and the fatigue with what people saw as kind of a formula for this series.
I didn't like the word paterfamilias.
You don't like paterfamilias? Come on. It's a good word. Latin? What do you have against Latin?
So many things, Josh. But it's the holidays, so I don't really want to get into it.
You're not going to air your grievances with Latin?
Oh, a Festivus episode. Maybe I'll challenge Latin to some feats of strength.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I don't agree, but it was actually tougher to find positive reviews of this movie than it was.
That's amazing because it's beloved, man. Again,
it is.
Unlike the film Beloved, which is not beloved, which, if I'm not mistaken, was Richard Le Cravenesse who wrote The Ref. Wrote that as well.
I was wondering, how are you going to make that reference relevant?
But I did in our little holiday bundle here. But it's strange how certain things over time become just, they catch their moment when it's appropriate, even if it's when it's not released, I guess.
Yeah, and I think this movie, I mean, for me personally, I think this is my favorite of the vacation movies. But even in general, I think this movie has certainly far overshadowed European Vacation in terms of people's interest. It maybe not the original film, but it's certainly second to that one, if anything.
Yeah, I like European Vacation, and of course we all like the first one.
Yeah.
It's after this one that the series takes a real tumble.
Yeah, I haven't seen European Vacation in a long time, but certainly, and we'll talk about it more later, but certainly after this, it went way downhill. So as we established, we were children when this movie came out. Did you see this at the time?
You know when I saw this for the first time?
When?
This week.
Oh my God.
I had never seen it before prepping for this. And that is the Christmas miracle of this podcast that now I can say I've seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, and it was a worthwhile experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
I totally was.
I don't recall seeing this like in the theater or anything, but this is a movie that, again, I think part of why it built the reputation, that it was on TV all the time. And it's one of those movies that I don't remember the first time I saw it, because I probably saw bits and pieces of it over and over again over a period of years before sitting down deliberately to watch it from beginning to end. But I did a whole series on Christmas movies on my blog several years ago. And I remember coming back to this movie, not having really watched it since I was younger, and seeing it in bits and pieces and wondering if it would hold up, and really liking it at the time and really appreciating the like craft of it. And I think I felt that way too. It's a good movie.
Can we read that still? Is that still
online? If you go to joshbellhateseverything.com, search for Christmas in July. It was in July a number of years ago, but I did write about a whole bunch of Christmas movies, including this one.
It's super enjoyable. Dave, what do you think? When was the first time you saw it?
I do not remember at all. I definitely know I haven't seen it since, when I was a little kid. I mean, it's been forever. But I do remember loving it. Like I loved all these movies, even the later ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously?
But I was a
That's
kid. I was a
hilarious,
kid at the time,
All right, that's no
what did I
excuse.
know?
Yeah, nothing, clearly.
Yeah.
At all. So, any other background? You said you did a lot of research on this one.
Did a lot of research, Josh. Well, like we said, John Hughes,
right?
Who had was not going to write another one of these because, as you alluded to, he said it had just become like a Chevy Chase vehicle as opposed to a full-fledged story. But he found a old story that he wrote for National Lampoon magazine, which is pretty cool. That he thought if he could find a good story, he would do it. And that was what was that? Christmas
59. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was cool. And like the Regular Vacation, the first one is based on another one of his stories. So that's good. I think it's interesting that we go from Harold Ramis and Amy Heckerling directing the first two to Jeremiah S. Chechik.
Yeah, there was a lot of criticism of old Jeremiah S. Chechik in the reviews that I looked up.
Really? I mean, he was capable, but
yeah, I think he does a fine job here. I do think that some of the direction is maybe the weaker part of this movie. This was his first feature. He'd come from TV commercials, and he has rather undistinguished career following this film.
Benny and June.
Yeah, I've never seen Benny and June.
Diabolique.
Yeah, a remake of Diabolique.
No, and a lot of TV stuff.
Yeah. But this was, I think at the time, because of what you just said, because of Harold Ramis and Amy Heckerling having directed the previous ones, and because of John Hughes's involvement, people maybe were expecting some great talent to be associated with this movie, and it wasn't.
Well, there almost was. This script was originally given to Christopher Columbus. And after he met with
Chris Columbus, the director.
Well, you call him Chris.
Everyone calls him Chris for obvious reasons.
Why is there another person with the same name?
I mean, not who directs movies.
Oh, okay. Well, look, Chris Columbus was out there exploring his way through cinema, and he met with Chevy Chase and told John Hughes something along the lines of, "I know I need to work, but there's no way I could work with this guy."
Yeah, and that's, I feel like, a thing that a lot of people have probably said about Chevy Chase.
Yeah, but so they gave him Home Alone, another John Hughes film.
Yeah, and another beloved holiday classic.
And I love that movie still to this day.
Yeah, I like Home Alone in certain ways. We'll talk about it someday.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, again, we got a lot of nice character actors in here. And it is perplexing how Jeremiah S. Chechik ended up with this job. You would think there would have been at least a few kind of up and coming, well-known
from
director.
Chris Columbus all the way down to Jeremiah Chechik.
Right. Who else was in the running, and how did this happen?
I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't. That's why. But I would like to.
Yeah.
It
I mean, maybe no one. Maybe it went right from Chris Columbus, and I mean, because Chechik came from TV commercial background, maybe he was a hot commodity at the time.
Or maybe they were just like, get on the John Hughes Express and he'll, Spielberg your way through this thing.
Right.
As we know, in certain movies, if Spielberg's producing, he can have a heavy hand in directing those movies.
Right. And we don't know how heavily involved John Hughes was, kind of on set or things like that
We
in
don't.
this movie.
We don't.
But they definitely has his stamp, and I think people think of this more as a John Hughes movie, and this whole series more, or at least these first three, as John Hughes movies more so than even their directors.
I mean, maybe we talk about that now, maybe we talk about that later, but he's the best. He's just the best, John Hughes.
Yeah. Well, we can talk further on John Hughes when we get to the legacy here.
Okay. So I'll reserve my feelings. But spoiler alert, I think he's really good.
All right. And I won't disagree with that. So we'll come back then and talk some of our general thoughts on Christmas Vacation. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In our second special holiday episode, we're giving a bit of a preview of our upcoming season on the films of 1989 by talking about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, a movie we both really enjoyed.
Yeah, really liked it. And as you said, you had watched pieces, if not the whole thing, throughout your youth.
Yes.
Your long gone youth. You're tattered and...
Yeah, thank you. We're recording this on my 40th birthday, so I appreciate you making me feel decrepit.
I would say it's all downhill from here, but it's been going downhill.
Yeah, it's been going downhill for a long time.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
But and me, I just saw it for the first time this past week, and we both found much enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, so. I think so. And like I was saying, I think, it's one thing as a kid, as Dave was saying too, loving these kinds of movies as a kid, you're very maybe uncritical about certain aspects of them. But coming to this movie as an adult, not only did I still find it funny, but the craftsmanship in this movie, especially Chevy Chase in this movie and some of the physical comedy he does is just brilliant.
He's always been great at that. And what I think we all like about it is like it fits within the scheme of what's going on, as opposed to like it's not overly broad. It's just big enough for what's happening there. And I also think the way he delivers certain lines sarcastically is very good, where he tells the neighbor, like the neighbor's like, "Oh, where are you gonna put that tree?" And he goes, "Bend over and I'll show you." And he goes, "You can't talk to me like that." And his wife's standing right next to him, and he goes, I wasn't. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's lowbrow humor, and again, a lot of slapstick, which I think was a lot of what the criticism was at the time. And I am not, as I'm sure we've talked about, a fan of this kind of like physical comedy at all, generally. Jim Carrey and who we've talked about before.
That's a much bigger, broader.
Right. I think this movie works really well on that level. And there's a lot of sort of subtle moments. I love the scene where Clark and Ellen are in bed reading, and Clark has been covered in tree sap from their ridiculous Christmas tree that they went and got, and his fingers are constantly sticking to the pages of the magazine he's trying to read, and then they stick to Ellen's hair. And Chevy Chase is great at underplaying that, and it's such a funny scene.
And it's nice that they don't say like, "Oh, you still have tree sap on your hands."
Right. Yeah, that is a great moment. And weirdly, one little gesture I remember is when Clark is putting up Christmas lights on the house, and he of course falls because that's what he does, and he grabs onto the ladder, and he's trying to get a hold on it, and he's got his hand, and he just kind of like keeps moving his hand around like he can't grab. It was just such I can't convey it verbally, but it was just such a funny little bit.
And it's not in the way you would go to grab a ladder.
Right.
It doesn't really, he goes like through and under it and whatnot. So I agree with you. Funny stuff all the way through. And, I guess they're all there just to kind of support Clark, but the old people are nice in there too, So
yeah. I mean, one criticism that I read is that the in-law characters, the Clark's parents and Ellen's parents, they kind of build them up before they arrive as like, oh, they're going to bicker and it's going to be terrible. And they really don't differentiate those characters all that much. They're just kind of generic. They sit on the couch and nap and whatever. I mean, we have much broader family members in Cousin Eddie, played by Randy Quaid, who returns from the original Vacation.
Yeah, he's so, and he's just so beloved in this series. Like, I'm not a huge Cousin Eddie guy, but people love Cousin Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cousin Eddie is used well here, as opposed to maybe in other Vacation movies. I mean, in the first movie, I think it's good too, but I was surprised watching this. I didn't remember how long it takes for Cousin Eddie to actually get there. but they don't spring him on you right away. So I felt like he is a very broad character, and maybe a little of him goes a long way, but I didn't get sick of him watching this.
Maybe one day we could review National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation 2, Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure.
I was actually looking after watching this. I had thought if that was streaming somewhere that it was easily accessible, I might try to watch it, and I did not.
That would have been awesome if you did.
Yeah.
It's interesting that in all the vacation movies, the kids are played by different actors in each one.
Yeah.
This is probably the strongest pairing, where you have Juliette Lewis and Johnny Galecki in Galecki's first movie.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, and they played lovers on The Conners. So that's
did.
weird.
They did, yes, many years later. Yeah, certainly this is the pairing of the kids with actors who went on to become the most famous.
Yeah. But most people probably love the Anthony Michael Hall, Dana Barron pairing from the original.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think Johnny Galecki and Juliette Lewis are good actors. I don't necessarily think that this is like the best showcase for the kids. They get kind of lost because we have so many wacky relatives who continue showing up at the house.
I think that's kind of necessary, not for them to get lost, but that we need to keep bringing in more and more relatives, because this is, we're going to have a big old fashioned Christmas here.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing. I don't necessarily. I wasn't watching this movie thinking, boy, I want to see more of Rusty and Audrey. I think there was just enough of them, and they serve almost more to like get the plot moving at times. If Clark needs a sounding board or something, then Rusty is there.
Right.
Or if Ellen needs to say, "Go tell your father something," then one of the kids can do it. I don't think that was bad. I think in the original Vacation, it's a lot more about the bonding between Clark and the kids and how much he wants to share his own childhood experience of Wally World with them. And this movie is less about that.
Right. But at least we had the Wally World mugs for them to drink out of when they had eggnog in this film.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice little touch. Yeah.
But and Beverly D'Angelo, who's a very good actress, it's interesting also because she gets to do a little here, but she has a lot of talent, and you get to see that in a lot of other movies, and you wonder if like we could have given her a little more here.
Yeah, I think so. She gets stuck as the sort of long-suffering wife. She's the voice of reason. When Clark goes and does something ridiculous, she has to rein him in. And I think the kids serve that purpose too here, is that it is really about Clark, and you can see the criticisms that critics made, and that also obviously John Hughes made, that these movies became just this big Chevy Chase showcase. And I don't mind that necessarily about this movie.
Maybe a show chase.
Or not.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I tried.
You did.
You know what I did miss?
Yeah.
Lindsey Buckingham.
No, see, I was going to mention the underrated theme song to this movie.
It's good.
It's good. It's sung by Mavis Staples.
Yeah. Well, it's a clear takeoff of all the Darlene Love Christmas songs. I love Darlene Love, and I like Mavis Staples too. But hey, man, when you think vacation, the song's called Holiday Road. Come on, bro.
Yeah, but they're not on the road in this movie.
But it is a holiday.
Yeah, but I guess one background detail we didn't mention, apparently Lindsey Buckingham was offered the chance to write a new theme song for this movie, and he declined.
I love that about Lindsey Buckingham. He's got who knows what's going on with him. Very talented Lindsey Buckingham.
Yeah, he's a prickly one as well.
There, that's a good word to describe him. They literally kicked him out of Fleetwood Mac, which is amazing if you think about it.
Yeah,
because when we saw him, he was the driving force of Fleetwood Mac.
He was, and that is not at all relevant to Christmas Vacation.
Josh, sometimes the audience wants to know more about
Fleetwood
me
Mac.
and you.
Little tidbits.
Yeah. You ever see Fleetwood Mac in concert? Dave's hair is kind of like Lindsey Buckingham's.
So John Turturro and Lindsey Buckingham. No, I think honestly, watching this again this time, and the animated opening credits, which are really well done.
Yeah.
I was thinking, why is this song not like a holiday classic that gets covered constantly? It's a really good song.
I saw that like some Disney Channel star sang it on some Disney Channel special a few years back, and that was the only really reference I could find to it other than this. But it is a very good, like the way I just mentioned her. What's
Darlene Love?
Yeah, Darlene Love used to come out on Letterman and sing every year. You could have seen like Mavis Staples come out and sing this annually as well. But
Yeah.
it was a good fun song.
Yeah, it's a good song. It's catchy, gets in your head. I like it.
I also like the opening sequence after it because we are used to them having a vacation. So seeing them on the road and going into the woods to get their own Christmas tree, I think is a nice kind of connecting bridge to what was and what will be in this film, what was in the past. And it's just fun. It's just fun. The whole movie's fun.
Yeah, that's a fun sequence, almost like a stunt sequence. Is there Clark, of course, who is unable to ever let anything go, not willing to let the rednecks in the truck pass them by, and then they get stuck under the what is it, like a log hauling semi truck or something. It was like a Fast and Furious sequence there for a minute.
Well, in the original one, right, where they end up in like Detroit after like some crazy highway antics, it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very funny sequence, and it's a good beginning, and it has that great, I think the thing you were talking about, Chevy Chase underplaying, and I think the movie underplays things too, where they go through this absurd harrowing car chase and then like launch off a snow embankment and land, and then he says, "Oh, well, we made good time," or something like that.
And then they forget all the stuff to get the tree, but then we just see that they took the tree anyway. So
yes,
there's a lot of things like that.
Yeah, there's some good editing rhythms there. I think one of the things with the direction maybe that I feel like undermines the underplaying or whatever is like there are moments where there's a joke. I think in that scene where Rusty says, "Dad, did you bring an axe?" And then there's like a wacky, like Looney Tunesy sound effect almost that they throw in there. Like, no, we get it.
The funny stuff in that scene is where he says, "Dad, that tree is not going to fit in our yard," and he goes, "It's not going in our yard. It's going in our living room."
That is a great line. Yeah. Yes. I mean, this movie it's a funny movie. Like you laugh, I think, throughout this movie at some of that deadpan stuff, but also the broad comedy, Cousin Eddie, the aunt and uncle who I love. Another thing I love about the Griswolds is they have all these relations that you're not really sure how they're related to them.
They just show up and they're like, and they do a good job of like, kind of, bending to the needs of the other characters as opposed to making those characters bend to the desires of the Griswolds.
Yeah, but William Hickey and what is her name? Mae Quetzal, I think.
Yeah, it was her last movie.
Yeah, she was the original voice of Betty Boop.
Yeah, big career, and William Hickey was like 20 years her younger.
William Hickey is one of those guys who played old people, I think, for like 50 years.
So funny. Yeah. He's so funny and everything. I remember my favorite William Hickey of all movies, I think, is Forget Paris.
I have not seen it with the Billy Crystal movie.
Yeah, where they're just driving down the street and like he looks out at every shop and just lists them. Like he's like, so it'd be, he's just like Al's Dry Cleaner
in Paris,
Johnny's Subway Shop, and he just lists them all off.
My friend Q said I'm turning into that character.
You are? There you go.
I mean, there are worse things to turn into than William Hickey, I guess. But yeah, I mean, they give of all of those, especially that aunt and uncle, they give them their little moments to shine and be funny.
Yeah.
And of course, Cousin Eddie gets a lot of funny moments as well.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you ever blown your stack so much that you've called someone a cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-lipped, worm-headed sack of monkey shit?
I'm glad you wrote that down. That, of course, what Clark calls his boss.
Yes, when he doesn't get his bonus.
Yeah, no, I've never done that.
I mean, it's a big moment.
Yeah,
for
it's a big moment.
Character.
Yeah, it's very funny. I mean, and I think that obviously that's another funny subplot. The idea of Clark having blown this Christmas bonus that he doesn't know whether he's actually going to get, so that he can put a pool in, which of course is a horrible idea. They live in Chicago. You don't put a pool.
You don't need to. But I felt like maybe that was the weakest little bit of the movie, that subplot.
Yeah. I mean, I think the resolution of it is a little weak because it builds and builds, and they kidnap Eddie kidnaps the boss, played by Brian Doyle Murray, who of course is another very funny comedic actor.
Yeah. And one of 4 SNL alumni in this film.
Yeah. Also co-star of our classic episode Cabin Boy.
Yes. And he was in the original Vacation movie as like a clerk.
Oh, right. Yes, yes. But so yeah, he's funny as the boss. And they set up the boss as such this like heartless guy who doesn't care about Clark. I love how he calls him Greaseball at one point. He keeps mispronouncing his name.
I like that. Who was fun to watch, who I always thought was very funny on the Tracy Ullman show, Sam McMurray.
Yeah.
He was a good character actor. We don't really see much anymore.
Yeah. And he's Clark's coworker here. He doesn't do a lot of funny stuff. He just kind of delivers exposition, but he is a very funny actor.
Yeah.
But I think the problem I had with that subplot is that it builds up the idea of the boss as so heartless, and Clark has put so much on the Christmas bonus that he doesn't get. And then we have this kidnapping, and then the boss is just like, oh, you know what, Clark? You're right. I'm going to give everyone a Christmas bonus, and I forgive you for kidnapping me, and everything is great.
Yeah, but you just said you liked how it undersold other parts of the film. So
yeah, but I like how it undersells the jokes, but I don't want it to undersell like, I think one of like, if we're going to talk about like a serious theme, if this movie has a serious theme, it's all about that sort of desperation to live the ideal middle-class life that Clark has in his mind, that of course is not something that is really achievable. And that whole plot builds on that idea that he works for this company that doesn't actually care about him. He's spending money that he doesn't have. And it just kind of cops out on
he's
that
in
at
a
the end.
perennial midlife crisis
He
throughout
is.
all of that. I mean, he needs therapy, Clark Griswold.
Clark, yeah, he needs a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
The whole family probably needs some
But
therapy.
mostly him.
Yeah.
Mostly him.
Yeah.
What about the big crescendo there? What do you think of that? They're outside and maybe they see Santa, and maybe, there's explosions in the sky and we're all singing the Star Spangled Banner because the old kooky aunt starts singing it. What did you think of that?
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, I feel like those bits are amusing. It maybe doesn't sort of stick the landing in general as much as it could have, not only with the boss subplot, but did you not like that scene?
No, I liked it in the way that it's like a big John Hughes crescendo, so it works in that like fireworks, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
But I think like if you broke it down, you'd be like, what? Wait a second. How is this the ending of a film? So.
Yeah, it does. It does just sort of end without any kind of button on it or whatever.
Interestingly, both the movies we've picked for Christmas, neither of them take place at all on Christmas. They both are Christmas Eve and that's it.
Yeah, this movie ends on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And the ref all takes place on Christmas Eve.
Right. So
that is interesting.
That is a good connection I've made for our fans.
Yeah.
Who are numerous and listening right now.
A gift that you've given them on this Christmas.
I do work for them.
All right. So I was going to say something and then you just...
What were you going to say, Josh?
I don't know.
I was talking about how these Christmas movies don't take place on Christmas.
Yes, I recall.
We were talking about the ending and serious themes and whatnot.
Yes, we were. It'll come back to me eventually. Oh no, I was going to mention Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Nicholas Guest as the neighbors. I think, you said as all the SNL alums in this movie, including Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and a relatively early role for her. And the yuppie neighbors, they're pretty funny that they keep getting sort of the blowback from the disaster happening at the Griswold house. And I do love the 1989 version of what do yuppies look like and how is their house decorated, and their precious stereo that gets damaged by the flying icicle.
Right.
I thought that was...
SWAT accidentally invades their house, which was a very Hughesian build as well.
Right. I like them as the kind of a runner there, that they don't... And also you might expect this movie to escalate to some sort of war between Clark and the neighbors, and it never happens. It's a very one-sided kind of dynamic where they just sit over there and seethe, and he doesn't even pay any attention to them at all. So I thought they were a nice little touch.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, fair enough. That was my point. Did you have other thoughts? Anything else you particularly liked?
No, I think we've covered it, man. I think, it's just a fun, whimsical, but somewhat believable,
believable, I don't think is necessary.
In the Griswold.
Yeah, in the Gris world.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like I said, we're going to talk about it next, but love John Hughes, and I think this captured the heart, which goes a really long way, and that's what John Hughes, all of his best movies do.
Yeah, What did Scarlett? What did your daughter like about it?
She liked it. She when the next day we came back, we had watched some of it, and then the next day she's like, "Can we watch that thing with the family arguing over the Christmas stuff again?" So, which was a fair assessment of
Yeah,
it.
that
So,
is an accurate
yeah.
characterization. So out of five, what Christmas lights, Christmas bulbs, malfunctioning Christmas bulbs?
Sure, malfunctioning Christmas bulbs out of the 25,000 on the grid.
Yeah, out of 25,000 bulbs, what would you give
That
it?
was that's the most iconic sequence, I think, right? Where he keeps plugging it
yeah,
in
and they don't know the switch, and it's a very like slamming doors farcical kind of bit.
yeah,
And
I'll give it 3.5.
yeah, I would agree with you too. I think it's a very fun and entertaining movie, and I do think it's the most enjoyable of the vacation films.
I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I'll still stick with 3.5.
All right, good movie, beloved Christmas film, and we'll come back and talk about the legacy of Christmas Vacation. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In the second of our two special holiday episodes, we're talking about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation from 1989, which will be the subject of our next season. And as far as the legacy goes, Jason has a lot to say about John Hughes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we have already started discussing the legacy and that this movie still plays in theaters every holiday season, which is a big deal. And John Hughes, man, sometimes, we look up lists of when Rob Reiner had that great run, we looked up I looked up his list. Dude, nobody had a better run than John Hughes in the 80s, and I'm saying you put John Hughes's 80s run against anyone in movie history at any point in
Wow,
time.
okay.
Mr. Mom, Vacation, 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, National Lampoon's European Vacation, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Some Kind of Wonderful, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, She's Having a Baby, The Great Outdoors, Uncle Buck, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Like, iconic films, a lot of them. And the ones that aren't were probably good, they were hits anyway.
Yeah, those certainly were all hits. I mean, he was a huge hit maker. And those are movies, some that he just wrote and some that he also directed.
Right.
But I think, as I was saying before, related to Jeremiah S. Chechik, those movies, whether he directed them or not, are really all thought of as John Hughes movies.
Right. And Home Alone, I'd say, we talked about Chris Columbus.
Yeah.
And he's had a very successful directing career, but I think Home Alone is probably the peak of like just raking in that John Hughes money of a Christmas movie and of something that caught. I mean, he was everywhere for almost a decade. Everything he did was almost gold, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this movie, although it does have some racy humor, it's less so than the earlier vacation movies. And I think this is part of that shift where in the 80s, he was doing those teen comedies, especially that he's really known for, that were a bit edgier, some R-rated. And as he got into the 90s and especially really kind of stopped directing and was just a writer and producer, he really shifted his focus to those family films. And I think this is part of the beginning of that. And once you get to Home Alone,
yeah,
you're really into a lot of these kid-focused movies that he did and that are not, I mean, Home Alone is, but I mean, didn't he do like Flubber?
He did Curly Sue.
Yeah.
Flubber. He wrote Beethoven under a pen name.
Yeah.
So I mean that had like 4 or 5. He's just everything he touched like went gold. Even if we're not like, hey, how about that classic franchise Beethoven? Like, dude, it's just a money making machine. Everything that he did.
Yeah, those family movies made a lot of money, but I don't think they're nearly as well regarded as the teen movies.
No, I would agree. Do you have a favorite? I mean, Ferris Bueller is tough to beat. It's an amazing movie.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those movies I haven't seen in a really long time, but I do like Ferris Bueller's Day Off quite a bit. I think these vacation movies are, I mean, they're in a different mode, certainly, than those teen movies, but they're very enjoyable.
Well, and I think that's what's so great about John Hughes is like you first think of him as Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, because he defined what a teen movie was. But he did all these other kind of like you're saying, so he had almost 3 branches, right? He had like family comedies, and then he had like kind of adult family comedies, which would be like Plane, Trains, and Automobile and the original Vacation movie, and then this kind of meaty middle of the teen angst movies of the 80s. He really was unstoppable, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's one. I think we talked in our last episode on the Ref about Ted Demme and how his career was cut short. But John Hughes, I mean, really, even though he had kind of stepped back from Hollywood a lot before he died, like he could have had a lot left in him.
Man,
I think
you really wonder, especially like with a Netflix or HBO, if they were just blank checking John Hughes, like what he would have done.
Yeah,
that would have been interesting.
I think it could have been great. And it's interesting, on his Wikipedia page, there's this whole list of unrealized projects, I think a number of which at least had full scripts written. And I'm surprised people haven't gone into those vaults and tried to make those movies. I don't know if his family maybe is keeping that away, but I feel like that could be a great Netflix project.
That would be awesome. When I had like my one hot minute in Hollywood, I was one of the projects they asked me if I had a take on was a remake of Mr. Mom. And it took so long for me to figure it out. But a year later, I figured it out, the way to do it. Because it's an impossible movie to, in a way, remake. Because in the 80s, the idea of like, or 1983, I'm a man and I'm going to give up my career and let the woman work and I'll just take care of the kids. Like you couldn't do that today and make it relevant,
They did do it. They did remake it recently.
I know,
and
but
nobody cared.
I know, they should have let me do it.
They should have.
With my version was the opposite of that, which is the man is kind of this deadbeat Seth Rogen type, maybe he's an artist or, something like that, a professional podcaster like we are.
Professional?
Yeah. Well, we have nothing, an ad or two. And then my idea was you do the reverse. You make the dad have to grow up and go out into the real world and become, Mr. Mom of what the mom was.
Okay.
The original.
Yeah. I mean, I think John Hughes, to see him work with Seth Rogen or Judd Apatow, I mean, that would have been some amazing stuff.
He's the best. Those were always the best compliments. Like I said, when I was, like going around taking those meetings, and they would say your script has a John Hughes style heart, which don't make a crass joke about the heart attack he had, Dave. Shame on you, but you know what I mean. That's. I mean, he gained so much from having the heart shine through on all of his best movies.
Yeah. John Hughes, enormously talented. And I feel like Chevy Chase, also really talented, squandered so much talent. But you watch this movie and you were reminded of how good he is and how much he wasted that over many years.
And I mean, this is just because he's a dick.
I mean, I think that's a large part of it. And I mean, but being a dick, the byproduct of that is, like you were saying with Chris Columbus, people don't want to work with him. Talented people who could use him really well don't want to work with him, or he's offered a part and he can't let his ego aside and listen to what somebody talented will tell him. And so he ruins it.
Well, he had that renaissance with Community, right? And then didn't that happen there too?
Yeah, he was I loved Community and he was very good on it. And I think it just got to a point where it may be in part because he'd been semi-obscure for a little bit and suddenly he was critically acclaimed again, that he got back to the point where he's like, I'm Chevy Chase and I know what's best. And then it clashed with the creators and he was out. Yeah.
The two other legacy points are that, like you had mentioned, the theme song, that they had like this weird bootleg soundtrack, or it wasn't even a bootleg. It was like a giveaway at Six Flags. And it became like, they had made 25,000 or something and only given out 7,000. So there were all these like, we have the soundtrack, and there were all these fakes going around online. People like the music of this one a lot.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize there'd be such a high demand, but as we established, I enjoy that theme song. I feel like maybe it's going to have a renaissance.
I hope you're right. And I like the fact that Griswold House still has a meaning in popular culture. When you drive by a very gaudy Christmas lit house, you call it a Griswold House. And
does anybody actually do that?
Dave does.
Just keep putting all this stuff on poor Dave. Well, we have to talk about the Vacation series and where it went after this.
I guess. Do we?
I feel like that's a key point, because this movie was, again, it was a success like the previous ones had been. And so they wanted to make more, although it took quite a while. I think Vegas Vacation,
97.
97. Was it in between there, or the Christmas Vacation 2?
That was way more
That was
recent.
later. Yeah. But I haven't seen that, but Vegas Vacation is just awful.
And what about the remake? The reboot.
The reboot. Also terrible, I think.
Yeah.
Have you seen either of those?
No, I don't really want to. That was another thing I was working on was it was like a found footage vacation movie like that, which I think would have been better than what they did.
Yeah, I mean the remake just completely missed the mark in terms of what it's supposed to be about. Or reboot. Yeah, again, Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo are in it, and the idea is Rusty, played at this time by Ed Helms, is going to take his own family on vacation to Wally World and encounters a lot of further obstacles. And it's just it's the opposite. It's all the crassness without any of the heart. I think is it fails to do what John Hughes was able to do really well.
The heart, you got the heart, you can get away with the crass.
Yeah.
But you got the crass, but not the heart. You don't get away with the crass.
No, I know. It was just a bunch of gross, uncomfortable jokes. And I really was not a fan. And Vegas Vacation is just, and that's, I feel like Chevy Chase at his most obnoxious in Vegas Vacation. And John Hughes, of course, did not work on either of those films, both of which came out after he died.
Right.
And it shows.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get like a series of like really good movies and then they turn into like this series goes so far off the rails for so many installments. Like when George Lucas directed those 3 Star Wars movies. This is the Star Wars of vacation of the vacation genre, Josh, this series of films.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, the original Vacation, that's Star Wars. Clearly, European Vacation is Empire Strikes Back.
This metaphor is really falling apart.
It wasn't good to begin with, but I committed to it.
And you're just making it worse. Much like they did with the vacation movies.
And it all comes full circle.
There you go. Do we think, could there be another vacation movie? Should there be?
I think you got to start from the beginning again. And, I think the idea of doing it with Rusty's family was a good idea. But like you said, they did it all wrong. So do you do that, or do you go back and do a new Clark Griswold for the new generation, for the millennials?
I guess. I mean, I feel like this is something that, even though it grew into this vehicle for Chevy Chase, it was something that was so grounded in John Hughes's own experiences to begin with that you can't replicate that.
Yeah. Well, you would need another writer who took a vacation.
I mean, where can you find that person?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. His would be, of all his movies would be tough to replicate. He's so singular. He's got such a clear voice with what he does, right? Like, I think almost any of his movies, if you were going to reboot them, would probably not work.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of those later family movies, especially something like Flubber, which itself was a reboot. I mean, you could certainly do that again.
I'm not really counting that.
No.
I'm talking about the ones where this is a John Hughes.
Right. The iconic ones. And like you were saying, they attempted that with Mr. Mom recently and nobody wanted to watch that.
Right. And
also, it was on Vudu, the streaming service from Walmart.
There you go. I mean, there's always talk about like a Planes, Trains, and Automobile remake because that movie's so beloved also. And really, we're recording this right by Thanksgiving. That's probably the best Thanksgiving movie that there is.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of Thanksgiving movies.
Yeah. So he just owns it, bro.
He does.
Not like Jeremiah Chechik.
No, Jeremiah Chechik, we alluded to, did not go on to a particularly distinguished career after this.
Benny and June was popular when
have you seen that?
Yeah, I remember that. That's I did see it. But of course, we know that movie best for the Proclaimers.
Oh,
and I would walk 500 miles, and I wasn't going to sing, but it's just walk 500 more.
No.
That is
what is that accent?
Are they Scottish? I think they're Scottish.
Miles to fall down at your floor.
It's door, not floor.
Door. Donkey.
No, God. Cut all that out, please, Dave.
Leave it in, Dave, because the Proclaimers.
Yeah, I know you love the Proclaimers.
I like
Benny and June. Is that the one also where Johnny Depp does the Buster Keaton bit with the dancing biscuits?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. I still haven't seen it, but that is a movie that I think has a nice reputation.
I think your sister likes that movie.
She might.
We've talked about Brandy in 2 episodes now.
Oh yeah. She's got decent taste in movies.
Yeah, not like your mom. Let's get into that.
What? Come on, man.
I love your mom, but her taste in movies is the best.
Yeah, maybe. I also love my mom.
Dale, we love you. We know you listen. Don't take that insulting. I just think you like every movie is all I was saying.
Can we talk more about Jeremiah Chechik?
Yeah. Don't be offended, Dale. I love you.
Jeremiah Chechik.
Yeah.
Directed The Avengers, starring Sean Connery and Ray Fiennes. One of the worst movies of all time.
Right, not the Avengers we know.
No, the remake of the 1960s TV series.
Who was the female lead in that?
Uma Thurman.
Oh.
Yeah, and Sean Connery in a giant teddy bear suit, I think, is in that movie.
I never saw it.
I did somehow for some reason, and it's bad.
But Sean Connery.
No, stop.
He's Scottish.
No. Also, he directed a lot of TV, and I guess I just was thinking this could have been a launching pad for somebody, especially because it's beloved and it was successful, but it really wasn't.
But like you said, it did well, and was number one, and blah 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 blah. But it's become more beloved over time.
Yeah, I think so. So, my other legacy note was about Randy Quaid going insane, but I don't know if we really need to talk about that.
He almost became Cousin Eddie in real life.
He did.
Well, who's more insane, Cousin Eddie or Randy Quaid?
I feel like Randy Quaid kind of overshadowed Cousin Eddie there he got that giant beard, and didn't he run away to like hide out in the wilderness or something?
Yeah, he thinks like the government's tracking him.
Yeah,
and his wife both are trying to get off the grid, but posting videos on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, it was a sad situation there. But maybe Cousin Eddie drew more on his real personality than we ever realized.
He channeled himself.
He did. Just like maybe he just got too method, and he never became like left the Cousin Eddie persona.
It's tough when you act, to leave those characters like Cousin Eddie behind.
Yeah, such iconic pieces. And do you think you show this to your daughter in full eventually?
Yeah, maybe even this year.
Yeah.
So, she can handle a little side boob, right?
I mean, that's up to you as a parent.
Oh, I should make that decision then.
Yeah.
There's like a middle finger.
Tweet at us and let us know.
Yeah, make Jason's parenting decisions for him.
Well, because he has, the Christy Brinkley throwback fantasy.
Right. Yeah, that is
Clerk.
One of the elements. I think actually that's kind of a little
out of place,
stale in this movie.
I agree. That whole sequence of him like dreaming about the pool wasn't the best.
No, it was definitely a self-conscious trying to like recreate something from the original movie. With Nicolette Scorsese is the actress there.
Is she a Scorsese?
She is not. Oh. Yeah. So I think that's a wrap on National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
And our holiday bonus episodes.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Happy Hanukkah.
Sure, that too.
Joyous Kwanzaa.
All of it.
Any other ones?
Solstice? Is there a solstice in there somewhere?
Probably.
Winter solstice?
Yeah. Enjoy that too.
It's a Festivus for the rest of us.
That too. Yeah. Festivus. Gotta get that in there. So many holidays. Too bad there's no Festivus movie.
Yeah. I don't think that would ever work, Josh.
No,
we have the perfect Festivus piece of art.
We do. We do indeed. So give us a holiday present by following us on social media.
And if you like us, give us 5 stars and I'll sing more for you. We are at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, and Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. I'm at Jason Harris Comedy or J Harris Comedy on literally Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And goforjason.com is my website, which still needs an update.
I am at joshbellhateseverything.com, where you can read my whole Christmas in July series on this and other Christmas movies. Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and Signal Bleed on Twitter. And listen to our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
You can find us wherever you listen to this podcast. You can also find us on social media at Piecing Pod. And we'd love it if you join the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces Facebook group where we talk about all these movies and continue the conversation.
Hey, before we go, what is your favorite Christmas movie? Really fast. You got to name one.
My personal, I don't know, A Christmas Story, maybe? That's an obvious answer, but that's the one that pops in my head right away.
Dave?
I'm trying to complete blank, you guys.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Christmas movies.
No, they're very few.
Bad Santa?
Bad Santa is good, yeah. I do love, as I think we mentioned earlier, I do love the Christmas horror movies. So Christmas Evil is a big one for me. I like a lot.
I'd probably go with Elf, most likely.
Elf's a classic.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
There you go.
So lots of Christmas movies that we can potentially talk about in the future.
But next, we're going to be talking about all the films, every single one of 1989, or at least everyone that fits the format and we chose to do.
Yeah, because that's how our show goes.
Should we say what episode 1 is going to be?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the box office champ of 1989.
Probably a movie and a character you've never heard of. Batman.
A man who is a bat? What?
Yeah, played by Mr. Mom, Michael Keaton.
Wow. Nice how that works together. So tune in next time for 1989's Batman, directed by Tim Burton. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.